Christopher de Santiago of BloodyElbow.com. Today I'm talking to a man who challenged for the UFC Featherweight title in 2014. A UFC veteran of wins over the likes of Charles Oliveira, Cub Swanson, and Diego Sanchez, and many more. We're talking to Ricardo Lamas. Ricardo, how's it going today, man?
It's going good. How are you doing?
Pretty good, man. It's great to see you. You're at the gym over there in Naperville, giving back to the community. How has that been since retirement, man?
It's been great. Obviously once you retire from fighting, there aren't kind of too many things you can do that still involve fighting. Coaching is the most obvious one. So towards the latter end of my career, I started thinking more about that and what I wanted to do when I was done fighting. And coaching is always, even before I started fighting, I was a wrestling coach and I would help out here and there. And it was something that I was really passionate about. So I joined forces with an old college teammate of mine, and together we opened up UFC Gym here in Naperville, and it's been going good.
The time away from the octagon, I guess how have you changed as a person? I guess realizations have you made outside of the octagon?
I guess it's kind of making that mindset switch from competitor to coach. Whereas as a competitor, you're kind of solely focused on yourself. It's kind of a very one-sided situation. So you're focused on your own training, on what you need to do to get better. And then being a coach is kind of, the opposite end. And you have to be kind of selfless. And now you're just working on your fighters and improving them. And it's all about the fighter and not about you anymore. So I think just kind of making that mindset switch. And that kind of comes into play because when I opened up this gym, I was still competing. So, but at the same time, I was coaching other guys and I was helping them. So we would kind of train together, but I was still in that athlete mindset where, I'm sure other guys can relate. Like when you're sparring and stuff, you're looking to win every round. You're looking to, constantly improve yourself. And so like letting go of that was pretty hard to do after I retired, and just kind of, you know, convincing myself in my own mind that it's now about these guys and not about me. So I think that was kind of the biggest switch going from athlete to coach that you have to make.
And I believe you retired at the age of 38. When you retired, when you did you feel like you could have kept on going, kept on winning, kept on adding to the record books? And I guess why did you feel like that was the right time to walk away?
Yeah, I think that I would have had a few more good wins in me, a few more fights in me. I think I could have kept going. With my personal situation, when I started fighting and like when I made it kind of into the bigger show, like into the WEC, I was young, I was single, I didn't have a family, and I was traveling a lot. So like I don't know if a lot of people know, but I live in Illinois, but I would do about half of my training camp, about 5 to 6 weeks in Miami, Florida. When I was young and single, it was great and there was no problem and I loved it. As I grew, I met my who is now my wife, and we started a family together and had kids. And even when like my firstborn, who's 10 years old now, when he was a baby, like before he started going to school, my wife and him would come with me to training camps. Obviously, as he grew a little older and he got into like preschool, kindergarten, first grade, they weren't able to come with me because he had to attend class. So they would kind of stay behind. And that made training camps very stressful just because I didn't like being away from my kids and away from my family. Um, but I endured for that for quite a few years as my kid grew up. But it just kind of got to a point where, we had more kids, and then it became even tougher to leave them behind and go train. So I think it was just the right time in my life, although I could have kept fighting and I was still able, I believe, to get better as a fighter and to improve and to rack up wins. But just at the point in my life where I was with my family and my business, I just felt it was time to step away from fighting and then start focusing on my family and my gym.
hmm I saw an interview that Ariel Helwani did of Rory McDonald, and he said like 3 years removed from like retirement, he still kind of has the itch to fight again, and he's training in the gym. You're constantly in the gym, so has that helped with the itch? And do you still get the itch right now?
Yeah, of course. there are times, especially where I'll watch like these big UFC events, ones that are hyped up a lot. And, I still wish that I could be doing that walk out and walking through that crowd and getting in that cage, and owning the gym and training these guys. But I don't only train them. I will like jump in there and I'll spar with them and I'll do pad work with them and wrestle and roll with them. So that does help kind of scratch the itch. But yeah, there's definitely times where I'm sitting there and I think on the old days of, sitting in that tunnel, getting ready to walk out to the fight and all the excitement and anticipation that go along with it and the nerves and the grind. And I miss all of it. So, if I could snap my fingers and go back and do it again, I would do it in a second.
Awesome, man. I guess these, and I'm guessing you still watch UFC very closely, right?
Yeah, I still try and keep up. There's so many events now. Sometimes I'll miss a few here and there, but and I'm getting old, so now it's like, 9 p.m. rolls around and I'm yawning and want to go to bed, and the events go till like 11 o'clock, almost midnight. But for those big fights that I'm really interested in, I'll sit there and watch the whole card.
Hmm. Dustin Poirier retired, and now Cub Swanson's like the only WEC fighter in the UFC, and he's on the verge of retiring.
Yeah.
When you hear that, how does that make you feel? Because I mean, you were in the WEC along with them.
Ah, man, it makes me feel old. I remember when I first started my career, and then I was considered like a rookie in the sport and a rookie in the game. And then, as my career progressed and as towards the latter part of my career, people started referring to me as like a veteran of the sport. And it's weird how time in your mind, like time is still the same, right? Like I'm still that guy that took his first step into the octagon. I'm still like see myself as like a beginner in the sport. Um, but just time keeps going and everything around you changes, right? And you don't notice it as it's happening, but it's like, geez, I've had 20 fights in the UFC and I'm considered like a veteran now. And, especially in my year of the UFC, there was no lighter weight classes. So I was like a pioneer of the, featherweights and bantamweights and flyweights. Like I was part of the beginning of that with the UFC when they brought us in from the WEC. So it's just weird to hear things like that. But, you know, uh, time is unforgiving and you just got to go with it.
Hmm. And I did want to ask you, I did want to get your take on the Featherweight GOAT conversation. You fought Aldo when he was in his prime, and but there has been champions after him. Connor, Volkanovski, Holloway, Topuria. There's no denying what Aldo did a decade ago. But I guess how do you kind of assess the conversation? Who do you think is Aldo still the greatest featherweight of all time? Do you feel?
I think, in my opinion, when you look at how long Aldo was champ, he was champ of the featherweight division before he got into the UFC. So at that point, the WEC, that is where the best featherweights in the world were at. He was champ there for a while. He was such a dominant champ. I mean, he made every fight look easy. I think when you just talk about the length of the reign of each champion and how dominant they were, it's hard to say that Aldo isn't the GOAT of the featherweight division. Now, I'm not saying that can't change in a few years, but I think Ilia could have kind of beaten Aldo's streak, but now he's moved up to lightweight. So when you're talking about featherweight division, the length of the reign and how dominant they were, you can't argue against Jose Aldo being the king of that division.
Hmm. What do you make of Ilia Topuria? I mean, he has a similar rise to Conor McGregor, except he defended the belt at featherweight before moving up. I guess you're a veteran. I really want to hear your take on what you think of the new school of Ilia Topuria, man.
I think he's amazing, man. I really enjoy watching him fight. I think he's just so technically sound and he's got the power behind the technique and he's so well rounded too. Like a lot of people don't know that he's like a great wrestler. He started off with Greco-Roman wrestling. He's good at jujitsu. But we don't even see him having to use those weapons yet because his power is so good in his hands. He just uses his boxing and he's just taking people out left and right with that. I think the longer his career goes and the more kind of different styles that they put him up against, we can maybe see some of his ground game emerge in some of his fights. But yeah, it's really exciting to watch him fight. I really like the way he handles himself. not only as a fighter but as a person. You know, he's one of these guys that rose to stardom without having to go that route of kind of putting on this character for the crowd and, you know, doing the whole trash talk and stuff. He's been respectful, confident, but respectful to all of his opponents. And I really like the whole thing about him.
Hmm.
I'm a fan.
Yeah, so when you and the Holloway fought, Holloway pointed down to the ground and you guys stood and banged. Obviously that's become a very viral moment over the years. With KG and then even Topuria did it. I guess did you ever expect that point down to get as big as it is?
Did not, you know, it was something that, you know, when me and Holloway were fighting, that was the first time he did it in any fight. And if you know, you could ask him too. I kind of like coaxed it out of him in that third round. Um, you know, I knew I was down on the scorecards going into the third, so I'm just like, God, this third round, I wasn't really hit with any shots that rocked me or anything. So I'm like, last chance I have is maybe drag him into a firefight and try and connect with something big. So about halfway through the third round, you could see a few times going in. I'm walking him down, and I keep going like this to him, and he mentioned it too in a few interviews. Um, and so I think it was like the third or fourth time I'm doing this in like the last minute of the fight, and then the 10-second clapper went off, and then you see him point to the ground, and then I finally go, I'm like, yes, you know, and let's go. And so it was great. It was something that you can't pull off without both of those fighters. I'm still waiting for my 10% commission off that because Max is he did a great job of marketing that and just taking it and running with it and like continuing to do it in the rest of his fights. And you know, it paid off. You know, UFC 300, you couldn't have asked for a better main event for the BMF title to end that way, and then him scoring the knockout literally in the last second of the fight. So I think it was great, but it wouldn't have been there without the fight with me and him. So I think UFC needs to put that one in the Hall of Fame.
Hmm. Yeah, I was gonna ask, does that make you like a BMF contender? Because I mean, you did exchange with him. Dustin didn't, in that last fight. Does that make you a BMF contender?
I think every guy that walks into the UFC cage is a BMF. You know, you gotta be a little crazy, and you gotta be a BMF to get in there in the first place. Just putting everything on the line and swinging, swinging for the fences with a guy who's been training 2 months to hurt you, right? So I think every guy that I have respect for everyone who steps in the octagon, whether it's in the UFC, whether it's in a local show, you got to have the balls to get in there. So everybody that does it is a BMF in my eyes.
For sure, man. A few more questions before I let you out of here. Do you feel like Holloway beats Topuria in a rematch at lightweight, considering, I mean, it is a weight class up, and the weight cut probably won't affect him as much as it did at 125?
That's a tough one. I think obviously now in Max's last fight against Poirier, I didn't expect it to go that way, right? Because they fought at 55 before, and Poirier just kind of controlled the whole fight. I thought that was going to be the same thing this time, but looking back, you know, for the first fight at 55 against Poirier, Max didn't really spend that much time training as a lightweight, so he was still holding his weight pretty low, and I think that did kind of affect him in the fight. And the second one, he knew it was going to happen at 55. Because I think the first one was he took it kind of on shorter notice. So the second one, he had a full camp to train for a 155-pound fight, and there you saw the difference. But we're talking about Ilia Topuria, so I mean he's got such good power in his hands. I don't know if it's going to make that much a difference that Max puts on a little extra weight. The guy's just so good, man. I don't know. I'd love to see the fight again at 155. We'll see if it happens because Max has been doing good. I don't know if they're going to give the next title shot to Gagey, to Max. We got to see what the UFC is thinking about that. But I wouldn't mind seeing a Topuria versus Holloway too.
Hmm. When you look back at your career, is there somebody that hits you harder than everybody else did? And like, who do you feel like out of your opponents carried the most power?
Um, there was, yeah, I mean, everybody's got power. We're in little 4-ounce gloves, so you connect with a shot on the right spot, you can put anybody out. Um, I would say, I mean, talking about power, it depending on certain strikes, I think like actually leg kick power, the hardest leg kick that I remember taking was against Hakran Diaz. That was actually the fight after my title fight. And he hit me with one leg kick right on the thigh, like right on the meat of the thigh. I felt his shin like go into my bone, like into the femur. And like I was like, holy, I had just gone 5 rounds with his training partner, Jose Aldo, who kicked me a bunch of times, and it didn't feel anything like his. So
Wow.
that was probably the hardest leg kick that I took.
Wow. That's very interesting because I mean, all those the leg kick machine, but
Yeah.
went up them, huh?
Yeah.
Who's one opponent that you never fought that you wish you got a chance to share the octagon with?
BJ Penn. And actually, I was supposed to fight him. We were signed to fight. We were going to main event a card in Manila in the Philippines. But then BJ pulled out due to an injury that he sustained during training. And after he pulled out, the UFC kind of canceled the whole show. But it turned out good because that's when they kind of put me up to fight Charles Oliveira in Mexico City. So still another great fight and a great destination. And but yeah, if there was one guy that I wish I can go back and kind of compete against, that would have been BJ because he was a guy that I looked up to when I was younger before I even got involved in training in MMA. And it would have been awesome to just face a legend like him in the octagon.
Awesome, man. What was the best post-fight celebration you've had for any fight?
That's a good question. I mean, maybe. So I was, born here in Chicago, and I fought on the local circuit a lot here. And as I was getting closer, I started traveling, and then I made it into the WEC. So it was like and then I made it into the UFC. So there was a span of a few years where I wasn't able to fight locally at home, until I fought Eric Koch at the United Center here in Chicago. So that was like my first fight back home. I was going up against who was considered to be the number one contender of featherweight at the time, and TKO'd him in the second round. And I think that was probably, post celebration. I had all my family and friends at the event. So that was probably the best one just because I was able to celebrate right away with my family and friends and everybody that was there.
That's awesome, man. I forgot the UFC is going to Chicago later this month. Hopefully, the UFC has you as like a guest for like a Q&A or something. Then that would be cool.
Yeah, I reached out to them, and they're going to let me know about tickets kind of at the end of the week. So hopefully they come through and will bring me to the event.
That's awesome, man. Well, I hope that's the case, and I think that's all the questions I have. I just want to thank you again for the time. Is there anything that you want to say to the fans out there watching, man?
No, just thank you for the support over the years. Without them, we're really nothing. So I really appreciate it, and hit me up, follow me on Instagram, Ricardo Lamas MMA. Come check out my gym, UFC Gym Naperville. We got a wrestling club too. That's why I got to go right now. We're starting practice in about 10 minutes for Top Dog Wrestling, and just having fun, man.